You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you, Jordan, Chelsea, and Susie, for helping me put the show together tonight, and thank you, the viewers at home, for tuning in. Let's get down to the starting line, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what's on the show. Starting line is, of course, sponsored by Motion Pro. We're going to be taking a look at some different techniques when it comes to powder coating in the Next Time Try This segment. In the Moto Showcase, we take a look at a 1997 very special Honda CR125. In the Here's the Problem segment, we've got a variety of questions. We're going to be addressing all of them. Some real interesting stuff tonight. We've got a Bultaco in the What's It Worth segment. The 522 project continues. We're going to be talking about the gas tank tonight. Don't forget, please join us. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's been a big help. It's been growing every day, but please subscribe and you'll get a little bell like that pops up whenever we're live on YouTube and, of course, on Facebook as well. I want to thank all of our sponsors, AMSOIL, Motion Pro, Vinco, Nightmare Racing, Full Circle Racing, and, of course, Preston Petty. This week's Next Time Try This segment is brought to you by Vinco. Keep the ride going. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about powder coating. You can hear pros and you can hear cons about it, but if you should decide that you do want to have your frame powder coated, I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between a real glossy finish and something that's only 70%. Behind me are two frames. We're going to get a closer look at them right now and you'll see the difference. Good place to begin would be back here on the upper shock mount. You can see how shiny it looks. Some people prefer that. But for a more authentic look, you'd want to go with the powder coating gloss that I discussed at the opening of the video. Tell your powder coater that you would prefer to not have 100% gloss, but you'd like more of a 60 or 70%. It looks much more like paint. It looks much more authentic and a much closer match to what the paint actually looked like on your Honda Elsinore or whatever black frame you would be refinishing from that era. You could also see along these top rails how glossy it looks on this frame, and on the 70% gloss frame, it's looking a whole lot more like paint and the way it would have looked originally. Let's get a look at the swing arms as they're laying flat under the light, and you could tell on the left, of course, is the 100% gloss, the high gloss swing arm done in powder coating. On the right, the one done at 70% gloss. Again, it looks a whole lot more authentic, and if you're restoring a bike, I think you want to ask your powder coater next time for a 70% gloss on your black frames. Well, there you have it. The differences were obvious between the 100% gloss and the 70% gloss. You could really see it on the swing arms too. My advice would be next time you go for a powder coating job, and it doesn't have to be just for black, it could be with any color that you're going to powder coat your bike. Silver, red, whatever it may be. Ask for a 70% gloss finish to make it look a little more like paint and a lot more authentic. Thanks, Vinco. Keep the ride going. In the Moto Showcase tonight, we've got a 1997 Honda CR125. It's a former race bike of Michael Craig when he rode for Honda of Troy. This bike was sent in to us by Shane Kuntz, and the Moto Showcase is, of course, sponsored by FastGuyStuff.com. As Jordan goes through the slides, I'm going to read to you a little bit about what Shane sent to us in the memo. This is a 97 Honda 125 that belonged to Michael Craig. It was ridden by him in the first part of 1997 in the outdoor season before he switched to 250s. It was purchased in June of 97 by a friend. The bike was unfortunately stripped of the A-kit suspension and cylinder, and it was replaced with stock items. However, a lot of small parts that were basically unobtainable at the time remained on the machine. The petcock guard, the water pump guard are still on it. It's adorned with all types of Dremel markings all over the bike that certainly tells you that the bike belonged to Michael Craig and it was a Honda of Troy bike at that time. I have not done a full restoration on this machine. However, I did touch it up a bit as the original exhaust and plastics were a little bit rough. The machine has the stock cylinder and the bottom end. It was taken to Pro Action in Pennsylvania, where DJ Corzin ported it as close to as possible to a pro-level power band as he could. With the cases split, we found that the transmission had the gears fly cut and polished. Need to say, this is a very strong running machine. I've ridden it a few times. It's a bit high strung, but it's an absolutely amazing bike. Shane Kuntz, I want to thank you for sending us in that 1997 Honda CR125, and get us your email or your mailing address, and we'll get you some stickers from fastguystuff.com. If anyone else is interested in having their bike put in the Moto Showcase, please inbox me with some pictures of the bike and a brief description, and we'll get it on the show. We are backed up right now for 2 or 3 weeks with some bikes, but it's never a bad time to send your bike in, and we could kind of get it in the queue, and we'll make sure we have it on the show in an upcoming episode. Thanks again, Shane Kuntz. And here's the problem segment tonight. Jordan, what do we got up first? Ken Spear, I love your show. Thank you for all you do for the vintage motocross community. Well, you're welcome, Ken Spear. Thank you for watching. I'm restoring a 72 Husky. I have all the Buffo bolts. How do I prepare everything for plating, and what type of plating should I ask for? Okay, Ken, the first thing you want to do is make sure that all your nuts, bolts, hardware fasteners, whatever you're going to have replated, are degreased. Whether you have a parts washer or you just have a small tub, maybe with some fluid in it, cleaning fluid, diesel, what have you, get everything degreased. After you have everything degreased and nice and clean, you want to make sure you get whatever filament is on there. Anything that remains, you want to get it off with a good brake clean. I like to use brake clean by AMSOIL. Get it all nice and dry. Your next step is going to be to polish everything. You want to use either a sizzle wheel with black emery and then a soft buff wheel with brown compound. You want to polish up everything to make it look so shiny that you would put it on the bike just as you see it. Of course, you wouldn't do that because it's going to rust. So once you get it all really, really shiny, you're then ready to go to your plater, and you're going to tell him that you want clear zinc on all those parts. Now, I've chosen this picture specifically because it has a sprocket from a Husky 125 that shows yellow zinc. So when you have any of those bolts on your bike, or maybe little fasteners or cable guides, anything like that, that looks like a gold color, as you see here on this sprocket, that's yellow zinc. Take a picture of it or make a note of it so when you go to your plater, you can tell them that's what you're looking for. So clear zinc on everything else, including spokes, all the fasteners, all the hardware, yellow zinc on things that you see that may be yellow. Now, you also mentioned to me that you're having difficulty finding nuts, nylock nuts with the red plastic insert. They are difficult to find. White ones, blue ones seem to be much more readily available. So if you have any of the ones that are in good condition and they have the red nylock in it, plating doesn't hurt that. If you polish that nut and put it in with the rest of your hardware, the zinc finish, the clear zinc, is not going to affect that when they put it in that solution. So you can use them. I had a thought today as I was going through the show in my mind, and what I thought was, if you can't find red nylock nuts, maybe you could get some nuts with the white in it. And this might be a stretch, but if you're really going for an authentic look, they sell spray dye in cans. Dye like you want to dye the interior of a car or a leather chair or a leather seat. It comes in red. It is plastic, that nylock nut or nylon. If you wanted to take the time to maybe mask off that nut a little bit, spray some red dye on there, you'd have yourself a red nylock nut in the end. There aren't that many of them. I think it might be worth the effort. Again, I have never tried that. It's just something I thought about during rehearsal today, and I wanted to share that with you. Ken Spear, thanks for sending in the question. Jordan, what's up next? Mark Ramos, Joe, what are the steps that I should take with my bike, it's a vintage two-stroke, for long-term storage? Mark, here's what I would recommend. Clean the bike as if you were going to clean it. You didn't say whether it's a street bike or a motocross bike, but I'm thinking it's probably a dirt bike. Clean it and detail it as if you were going to do that after a race or after a long ride. Make sure you do the filter, you do the chain, you get everything nice and tidy. If your bike has a steel tank or a plastic tank, fill it with gas. Fill it with gas. If it's steel, you don't want it to rust. If it's plastic, you don't want it to dry out. Fill it with gas, and I would recommend some gas stabilizer from AMSOIL. So do that. Don't leave it dry. Don't think that having no gas in it is the answer. Make sure your petcock's off, fill it up. You want to drain the carburetor as well. Make sure there's no gas left in there. Some other things that you can think about is a metal protector. Again, I like to use Motion Pro stuff. AMSOIL. I like to use AMSOIL products. I got MP mixed up with Motion Pro. Anyway, you want to use an AMSOIL product to maybe cover that bike, any of the metal. The chrome on the forks, if you have exposed chrome or hard chrome fork legs, take some clean motor oil, wipe those things down. Any chrome on that bike, if you have chrome rims on it, I don't know. You might want to go around that with some oil. A lot of people will say to spray the bike down with WD-40. WD-40 is a great lubricant, but it cuts oil. In other words, you've used it, and I've used it plenty of times. When you've got something oily, you spray a little WD-40 on it, it wipes it right away. It does the same thing for when you're taking a sticker off and you have glue. So WD-40 is a pretty good product, but I would not spray it over my whole bike because you may be removing some oils and protectants that you have on there that you want to have on it over the winter. Now, I'm going to mention one other thing, and it is, once again, an AMSOIL product. It's called engine fogging oil. I've never used it. I don't know how it works. From the directions that I've read, you start the bike up, you spray it through the carburetors, and when smoke starts to come out through the exhaust, it's going to run out of burning on that, and that coats the inside of your intake system and probably your piston and rings. I've never tried it, but that's something you might want to read up on, depending on your bike. If you want to do that, you might consider that. But just remember, drain the carburetor, fill the tank, do a basic maintenance on it the same way you did if you were going to ride the bike. Now, in this picture here, you see a cover. I would recommend covering that bike too. And you see these plugs up here? They're little expansion plugs. Plumbers use them to plug off pipes in a house when they're working. They come in different sizes, depending on what pipe you have on your bike, the exhaust pipe. You might want to buy something like that. You could put it in the end of the pipe, and when you turn that wing nut type thing, there's a bolt inside there that walks up through that rubber that's going to make it nice and tight. I've experienced it many times. I'm willing to bet a lot of people here watching the show have as well. Mice get in the exhaust pipe. They get in the air box. They bring in all sorts of things that can wreak havoc with your bike. So get that exhaust plugged up, fill the tank, drain the carb, change your oil, do everything you would do on a general maintenance, and get a good cover for it too. So when you start, you can get back there in the spring or whenever you get to it, your bike's going to be ready to go. Mark Ramos, thanks for sending in that question. Robert Hopkins, Joe, I have to strip paint from a Montesa tank. Will any paint stripper work, and do you have any tips? Any paint stripper will work, yes. I prefer to use aircraft remover. It's the best stripper that's out there. It's a little caustic. You want to use it outside. Make sure you maybe wear a respirator mask or certainly some gloves and eye protection as well. If you don't have that type of aircraft remover, that type of paint stripper, you get whatever you can get. But the way you want to remove it, Bob, is to use steel wool. It's a fiberglass tank. You want to use steel wool and take off a little bit at a time, work one area at a time. Don't use a scraper, as many of us would try maybe on a steel tank or even a plastic scraper that you might use on an aluminum tank. And I'll tell you why. The last thing you want to do is break through the gel coat. What is gel coat? When a fiberglass tank or any fiberglass part is made, much like this cover for an air box for our 522 project, what they do is there's a metal mold. They lay fiberglass in there. On top of the fiberglass, they put resin. And then they take a roller and they roll out all the air bubbles and everything and make it all nice and tight so you have a nice finish. But it's still rough. And if it's thin, like it is on this cover or like on a gas tank on a Montesa, you don't want to break through that. How is that protected from the factory? It's protected with something called gel coat. Now on this side of it, this piece was gel coated. It's nice and smooth. It's ready for prime. It's ready for paint. On your Montesa tank, on other fiberglass parts, there is a gel coat before they paint it. Corvettes have that on it as well. Anyway, you don't want to break through that gel coat with anything sharp. That's why I recommend the steel wool and being patient. If you break through that, the fiberglass hairs are going to start sticking through. You're going to have to re-gel coat it again. You're going to have to sand it, and it's going to be a whole lot more work, Bob. So, yes, you can use any stripper, but be patient and use steel wool. Don't use any kind of scraper. Be careful not to cut through the gel coat. And that's my tip on how to strip a Montesa tank or any other fiberglass part that is painted as well. Jeff Kokoski, a friend, and I'm thinking it's you, Jeffrey, but a friend is looking to buy a 77 YZ400. However, it has a 1978 parts added to it in order to slightly resemble the factory bikes of the previous year. Does this hurt the value of this bike? By the way, the stock parts are included. No, I don't believe. In fact, I'm certain it doesn't hurt the value of the bike at all. In the next picture, you'll see a 1978 up there on the right. It has the aluminum swing arm. It's got the yellow fork boots. Looks a little bit different than a 77. Now, they're stock parts. They're simple bolt-on items. And yeah, they do look a little bit nicer. And who wouldn't want an aluminum swing arm as opposed to a steel one? It doesn't hurt the value at all, Jeff. And the fact that you're getting the stock parts with it is a huge bonus. So if you're paying a fair price for the bike to begin with, get the bike, take those spare parts and run. If you ever want to restore it, turn it back to stock, you have them. And you kind of have a little bit of a bargaining chip there too. If you wanted to sell the parts or if you wanted to keep them and do some other things with them. No, it's a fair deal and it doesn't hurt the bike at all. It doesn't hurt its originality whatsoever. So Jeff, thanks for sending in the question and tell your friend to go out and buy that bike. Take a commercial break. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Jeff at Motion Pro, showing you our Bead Pro combination tire tools today. Now these are a very innovative tire tool in that they are multifunctional. They both are great for breaking the bead of your tire as well as spooning the tire on and off the rim. Now we have two versions. The first is the standard Bead Pro. These are forged 7075 T6 aluminum in construction, very lightweight for tool pack use. And then we have the Bead Pro FS, the FS standing for forged steel construction. Now these are great for shop use. They are a little bit longer so you have more leverage. They're 16 inches long versus 9.8 inches long for the standard versions. Now the geometry of the tools are about the same between the standard and the FS versions, but as I mentioned, the materials are different and the lengths vary a bit. Now they have a nice ergonomic feel in your hand, and this cross T feature keeps your hand from slipping as you insert the tool into the bead of the tire. And on the one end, you have this innovative tongue and groove feature, which leverages the tire off of the rim. It easily breaks the bead on both off-road wheels and tires, as well as street applications, even those with large safety beads. Now the opposite end have this nice smooth spoon profile, which easily brings that tire up and over the rim to bring it off and then spoon it back on. These are affordably priced, so go ahead and pick one up for your tool pack as well as for your shop use. They're available from your favorite powersports dealer nationwide.
Great tool from Motion Pro. In this week's What's It Worth segment, which is sponsored by Preston Petty Products, we're going to be telling you a little bit more about Preston Petty in just a minute. In this week's What's It Worth segment, a 1977 Bultaco 250 for $3,950 in Minnesota. Now, before we go on with this 1 minute here, I want to say that in the description of this bike on eBay, it said restored to better than new condition. And that's what really irritated me about this bike. The $3,950, it's not the greatest price, I think, for this bike. As we go through the pictures here, I'm going to read a little bit about it, and then we're going to talk more about it as well. The description said it was a 70-year-old collector selling his ground-up restored Bultaco 250%. The motor was completely rebuilt by Classic Bultaco in Craryville, New York. If it needed replacing, it was done. The frame was media blasted, 2 coats of PPG, and then 2 coats of clear. The gas tank was done with the same procedure. It's got Caswell liner in it. The bike is ready to be stored in someone's living room or raced in vintage motocross. I got a big problem with this bike because it says restored to better than showroom condition. And you know what, Jordan? Let's just stay right here on this picture of this back wheel. The tire is halfway bald. There's not one piece of hardware on that bike that's been replated or polished. And I would bet my bottom dollar that that back wheel chain adjuster is painted silver. Jordan, go back a picture if we could. Here we go. Showroom condition, ready to be stored in your house. Wrong fuel lines. Carburetor looks like it just came off the track. We've got a hose clamp on there that came from Ace Hardware. Next picture. Okay, while the case is polished up pretty nicely, look at the head. Nothing's been done to that. It hasn't been vapor blasted. Nothing's been done to that, to the Kickstarter. Nice touch on the sticker on the frame. Maybe that's part of your return to showroom condition. Next picture. This one doesn't really say too much. I mean, the paint looked nice on the bike. I'm sure that whoever painted it did a real nice job. Again, here's the tank. It was probably sent out. Whoever did do the paint on this bike, it looks really, really sharp. It's really the most redeeming quality about the bike that I could see, other than the fact that Hughes Bultaco from Craryville is claimed to have rebuilt the engine. Now, I know the Weaver family from Craryville way back from when I was in school in Jeffersonville, New York. They've been selling Bultacos since the late 60s. If they did the engine on this bike, I know it's a good job. The Weavers are great people. The back, it looks pretty good. Fender looks straight. The fender looked as crooked as 7th Avenue at the rush hour on the front of this bike. Look at that fender. Look how the cable's hanging. Look at how the kill switch wire is hanging. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not really seeing a restored bike back to factory or really much more than a glorified race bike, $39.50. I think it's a little heavy on the price. Yeah, the frame is painted, the engine's rebuilt, but what really gets under my skin is when people put restored on a bike like this. And I'll tell you why. There are a lot of first-time guys out there, first-time buyers, who when they read something, they believe something. And sometimes they don't have people to advise them. They may not be watching a show like this. It's something they get really excited about. They had a Bultaco back in 77, 78. They're listening to this guy say how it's been restored, and they make an impulse buy, and they wind up with a bike like this. I'm sorry. I think somebody took it in the shorts on this bike for $39.50, and that's how I see that. I want to thank Preston Petty Products for sponsoring this segment of What's It Worth. Preston Petty Products, the legend continues at 10% off everything across the board from Patty and Paul Stannard. And thank you, Preston Petty. 10% off on everything. Grips, fenders, lights, number plates, hats, and shirts. And speaking of shirts, Paul's going to send you a t-shirt for free with your purchase. Inbox me for the code. I'll get it to you when you check out. You put the code in. You're going to get 10% off on everything you buy. And Paul's going to contact you about the size of your shirt. And you get a great Preston Petty shirt. Well, not like this, because Preston Petty is a sponsor of the show. And while I'm thinking about it, I want to thank Paul for this shirt. It's a great fit, beautiful. I'm really happy to be and proud to be wearing a Preston Petty shirt here on the show tonight. What do we got next, Jordan? Welcome to this week's installment of the 522 segment. This week, we're going to be talking to you about the gas tank. I want to thank our sponsor, Full Circle Racing, for sponsoring this segment. Go to Full Circle Racing Limited, and you can find wheels for both modern and vintage bikes. I'm going to be telling you about a special right after this. The gas tank of the 522 bike. This is a replica of the 74 RC 125 that Marty Smith rode to the inaugural 125 Nationals. This tank is made of fiberglass. It's a little narrower on the bottom than I would like to have. And it's also a little bit heavier, although I'm not really concerned with the weight so much. The rear tab at the back isn't exactly something I would have done in the first place, but right now it's all I have. This tank was purchased for this bike. It was the only one I was able to find. So many times when people do try and replicate an RC or what they call a Marty Smith replica, the gas tank is never really that authentic. More than not, they use a plastic gas tank from Clark, or they don't change the tank at all. This is the tank that we have. What I'm looking to do is to replicate this tank in aluminum with a couple of little different nuances about it that are going to be more authentic to the real tank that was found on the RC 1974. So right now, this is what we have. It's pretty nice, but not exactly what I want to use on the project. If anyone watching this happens to be a fabricator who can make a gas tank, You can get in touch with me. I may send you this tank, and we'll talk about a few changes I want to make on it. Who knows? Maybe you'll become a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'd really like to hear from somebody. If not, my quest continues to have a tank like this made. I want to thank, again, Full Circle Racing for all they do for our show. And that's it for this week on the 522 segment. Tom McAllister and Full Circle Racing, they're running a great special, black or silver, 19 and 21-inch rims. They retail for $290. Tom's got a great special going to Vintage Motocross Q&A viewers, just $240. The offer expires at the end of the month, 10/31/20. These wheels are available for most Hondas, Yamaha, Suzuki's, Kawasaki's, and CZ's, as well as Husqvarna and Mako. Be sure to mention it that you saw it here on the show when you call Tom McAllister up at Full Circle Racing to get that discount. Thank you, Tom. In the product spotlight tonight, my dear friend Mark Hildebrand and Nightmare Racing is running a special also, 10% off on all Nightmare Racing products. And of course, you know, Mark has been at the forefront of the Kawasaki reproduction plastic game for almost 20 years now. Nobody does it better. Nobody makes a better product. The shine, the fit, the finish, nobody does it better than Nightmare Racing when it comes to reproduction Kawasaki plastic. So get a hold of my buddy Mark, tell him that you saw the special here on the show, or you can inbox me and I will give you the code. If you don't inbox me and you call Mark personally or you email him, tell him that you saw his special here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, and you're going to get a little bit of a discount there from my good friend Mark Hildebrand. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Nightmare Racing. Take a commercial break here. Take a look at some Vinco products.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
This week in motocross history, which is also brought to you by Vinco. Jordan, what happened this week? Roger DeCoster, the man, wins Unadilla for the 5th straight year in 1978 on October 8th. It's also his last Trans AMA win ever. DeCoster, who was a 4-time champion of the U.S. versus European Series, was his most dominant at Unadilla. He would later guide the 1987 version of Team USA to another win there when the trio of Jeff Ward, Rick Johnson, and Bob Hanna all got together at Unadilla. That was in 1987 for the FIM Motocross des Nations, which was quite a mud race. But the man, Roger DeCoster, won Unadilla October 8th, 1978. And we got a couple of youngsters here on the show tonight. Travis Pastrana is celebrating a birthday, and there's 2 Suzuki prospects here I'm going to read a little bit about. They're both from different eras, and they both ended up having somewhat star-crossed racing careers, though there were different levels of success. Back in the 70s, Flying Brian Myerscough was in California hotshot, who battled with Honda rider Jeff Ward for mini-cycle supremacy. He turned pro in the summer of 1977 and raced just 2 125 Nationals, finishing outside the top 10. Then he stayed local in 1978. In 1979, Myerscough started his full season with a 125 national win at Hangtown, and he appeared to be on the mark to really make a real impact in the sport. Unfortunately, Brian suffered from hypoglycemia. It's a blood sugar disorder that kept him really from ever reaching his full potential. He won just one more 125 national before retiring in 1986. It's also Travis Pastrana's birthday, one of the most promising amateur careers in all of motocross, but he turned to a different line of work. He, of course, is one of the most incredible stuntmen and showmen on a motorcycle anywhere, and it is his birthday today, August 8th. Brian Myerscough and Travis Pastrana sharing a birthday today. Happy birthday from everybody here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. In the announcements, Jordan, what do we got coming up first? Vintage Motocross Radio, my guest last week was Selvaraj Narayana. Big Cheese at KTM. Let's listen to some of the sound bites from Sel. Your early experience with Mako was actually putting bikes together at the factory.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and also I'm helping Barry Onsen, the Swedish, the 125 road racer, helping him as well, and building some of his engine. He always wanted me to build the bottom end of the engine because he is so comfortable with me putting those engines together. So
now with Mako and working in the factory, how long before it was that they sent you out on the road to work with the motocross team in Europe?
But first, 1969, and I have been 70. Then I was with the road racing. Then they, from the production line, they transferred me, or they saw me working and said, well, it's not the place for you. So they put me in the racing team. So I basically have to build the racing team workshop from the beginning with few technicians. Then 1970, 71, then I went to the road racing with the Grand Prix together with Barry Onsen, and some of the races in France and Germany, and as well as in Austria. Then after that they asked me, Mr. Hans Maisch asked me to go to Supercross, Grand Prix and international races, and so I went with them and help them out with those bikes. So Mr. Maisch asked me to join the motocross team. Then I did all the Grand Prix with Willie Bauer, Hans Maisch, and Aki Johnson, and Adolf Weil, together the whole team with Ryan Alweyer, who's a very good technician. And so we went to all the Grand Prix and drive in a van to the races every weekend and come back and build the bikes and go back, and Thursday drive all day, and Sunday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and come back and Monday build the bikes every weekend. You know, this was a routine for every weekend.
Selvaraj Narayana, fascinating interview, over 50 years in the industry. You want to listen to his interview, go over to Vintage Motocross Radio, and you could hear the entire interview. He talks a lot about Roger DeCoster in the end too, so you might want to tune in for that. This week, my guest at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning at Vintage Motocross Radio will be 1982 250cc world champion Danny Laporte. We've got a lot to talk about with Danny, not only his championship in the 250cc class in 82, but so many of the other things that he had done along the way, including a 500cc national championship, some Dakar races. He's been a fixture in the industry as a racer from the mid-70s, late 70s, right up until this very day. I'm really excited to be talking to Danny Laporte this Sunday morning. And while I'm here talking about Vintage Motocross Radio, let me say this. I've brought you 28 live interviews in 28 weeks, every Sunday, from Brad Lackey to Rodney Smith to Danny Laporte this week, Lars Larson, some of the greatest mechanics, Dave Arnold, some other industry people that were there, Chris Carter, Steve Simons, 28 live interviews in 28 weeks. There's nobody bringing you that except Vintage Motocross Radio. If you can, I would advise you invite some of your friends there, listen to some of those interviews. It's going to get better. And I'm going to say this because it's already listed on the page already. I was on the phone with David Bailey yesterday. David Bailey will be a guest on our show in the very, very near future. Check back at Vintage Motocross Radio to find out when David will be on the show. We've also been in contact with Billy Grossi, Lyle Lovett, and a few other guys as well. So I'm going to keep going wide open every weekend, every Sunday at 11 a.m., bringing you as many interviews as I can. I want to thank everybody who listens to Vintage Motocross Radio. Coupe Classic this Saturday and Sunday, October 10th and 11th. It's up in Marysville. And Dave's got all kinds of things going on up there. He's got a class for just about everybody. He's got vintage classes, 75 and older, post-vintage. He's got modern classes. There's all kinds of things going on at the Coupe Classic. And Jordan Woodworth and I will be there this Saturday. We'll be there. We're going to have the camera with us. We're going to have the mic. We're looking to do some interviews. We're looking to talk to some interesting people, put some things together, and have them here on the show in some future episodes. So if you're not doing anything on Saturday or Sunday, go up to the Coupe Classic up in Marysville. Dave Coupe, thanks for all you do for the sport of vintage motocross, and thanks for having Jordan and I up there this weekend. I'm sure we're going to get some great footage. Tammy and Ralph Greenhill, the old school Scrambles group, they've got some things going on too. If you're in Southern California, October 11th, you can get down there to the Glen Helen track. Tammy's got another race going on there. Rod Lake is a big supporter of this. First-time riders get to ride compliments of Rod Lake, and kids always ride for free. So if you're down in Southern California, go see Tammy and Ralph Greenhill over at the Glen Helen for the old school Scrambles.
And this weekend's Oktoberfest. It's the GP.
Oh,
It's going to be a good one.
Oktoberfest this weekend too. You got a GP there at the track there, Jordan, on the Glen Helen big track?
Yep, and it's, well, no, on the truck track. But
On the truck track.
Beyond the borders.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of being lapped by Rex Staton last year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Got the GP there this weekend too. Thanks, Jordan, for filling me in on that. And there's another race if you're out in the East, October 10th and 11th. That's weekend too. That's this weekend too. Armand Northeast Vintage Cross Country and Motocross. I'm not sure. No, there's a cross country here too. You need to speak to Merritt Brown or Ed Roman, or go to VINTMXER at AOL. That's Ed Roman, MB Brown 326 if you want to speak to Merritt Brown, or go to the ARMA Northeast website to find out more about the Gears Farm Cross Country and Motocross in Fulton, New York this weekend. Beautiful time of year up there in New York. The Burner, my buddy Scott Burnworth, putting on MX Classic 11, October 24th, 2020. That's also at Glen Helen. Scott does a great job down there, and he has for so many years. He's got a class for all bikes, including vintage, post-vintage, two-stroke. He's got a modern race, and this year featuring the first annual Marty Smith Memorial Cup. You'll be able to mix it up, I believe, with Ricky Johnson, Todd DeHoop, Tommy Croft. I think Steve Wise is going to be there, and a host of other legendary riders ripping it around, remembering Marty Smith. I've got one Preston Petty fender left. Actually, I don't have it. Paul Stannard has it back in Vermont. This is the first 5 that came off the assembly line in 2016. There were 25. The first 20 went to industry people, family members, special people. There were 5. Preston Petty has autographed them. We've sold 4. It comes with a letter of authenticity. All proceeds go directly to Preston Petty. This is the last of them, fellas. The last one. It's $150. Get a hold of Paul Stannard or contact me. I'll get a message to Paul and we'll get you the last one. It's $150, letter of authenticity. All the money goes to Preston Petty. And after this, as they say in Italian, tutti finiti. It's all done. It's finished. There's no more. Get this one while you can. Yes, I am giving away a bike here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, a 1983 unrestored Honda CR250. And there's no purchase necessary. All you need to do is go and inbox me at vmxqalive@gmail.com. We're going to send you an email back. It's going to have your number in it. You're going to save that number. We're going to take it and we're going to put it in a little envelope like this. And on December 23rd, 2020, Christmas Eve, night before Christmas Eve, we are going to pick a winner for this bike. Now, only members of Vintage Motocross Q&A are eligible. Sponsors of the program, Preston Petty, Motion Pro, Vinco, and so on, they are not eligible to be in the drawing. So, all you need to do is watch the show, email me at that address. Susie's going to send you a number. We're going to take it, put it in an envelope like this. It's going to be sitting back here. We've got close to 100 of them already. They're going to be sitting back here in a clear box. And on December 28th, during the show, maybe I'll have a special guest come in to pick the ticket. I don't know if I can get a special guest. I'll see what I can do. But on December 23rd, somebody's going to win a 1983 Honda CR250, the one you see right there in the picture. Unrestored, beautiful running bike. You're responsible for the shipping. We're just giving bikes away. T-shirts are still available, $21.99, Vintage Motocross Q&A logo across the front, 100% cotton. It's got a little logo across the back with my autograph on it at no extra cost, $21.99. Follow the link in the description of the show. Get yourself a Vintage Motocross Q&A T-shirt today. Sponsorship opportunities are still available. As you can see, the set got a little wider. I still have a little more room. If you want to be a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A, please inbox me. I will get you a proposal and we'll get you on board, and you can share some of the great benefits that all of our other sponsors are seeing. We're hitting over 20,000 people a week. 2 weeks ago, we went to 27,000. The YouTube program is going, and we're going to be expanding into some other social media networks as well. So get a hold of me and I will get you a proposal. We'll put something together for you, customize your budget. Maybe you want to go every other week. Maybe you want to go every other month. Whatever you want to do, I'm interested in having you here on the show so you can be a sponsor of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Jordan, while I'm doing this right now, I got this little card in front of me. And maybe it's a little too early, but I did want to mention it because it's from my buddy Bill Nazelrod. Sunday, January 24th, the Potomac Vintage Riders is having a great swap meet. I'm mentioning it a little early because it's an event that I enjoyed for many years when I lived in the Northeast. It's the Potomac Vintage Riders at the York Fairgrounds. That is January 24th, and that's coming up. Now, I don't know with COVID and what else is going on, exactly what's happening there yet. I know they do want to have the event. But if you can, go to pvrclub.org. You can find out a little bit more if that event's going to be taking place. Admission's only $10. And before you know it, January will be here. And you might want to get to that swap meet in the middle of the winter out there in Pennsylvania. What else we have here tonight, Jordan? I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Please go over and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to listen to all of our interviews at Vintage Motocross Radio. Please support all of our sponsors whenever you get the opportunity. And don't forget to join me. I'll be with Danny Laporte Sunday morning live at Vintage Motocross Radio. This is Joe Abadi. Thank you for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. Gino. Oh, Gino. Come on, boy. Hey, come on. Come on, Gene. Oh, there you go, Gino.